There is a question from a spiritual seeker that I'm going to read now. And they say, I have a question regarding very specific symptoms which have not been mentioned. Can we consider them in the context of the dark night of the soul? So, this is in reference to my earlier video on the dark night of the soul. They appeared with a Kundalini awakening after a severe emotional shock. A kind of spiritual emergence followed. These fears are still there. It is the fear of driving, fear of losing control in public, fear of moving away from familiar and known places, fear of going out alone, claustrophobia and severe agoraphobia, fear of going crazy, no of no longer knowing how to be in public, in the street, etc. All of these symptoms are so serious that they cause disability in daily life. My question is to now, if these symptoms are due to dark night of the soul. It's so hard, a long night since 5 years now. Yes, all of these symptoms can happen after awakening, and what follows is the dark night of the soul, which is a period that is marked by confusion and conflict. Now, let's for a moment look into the structure of the mind. And all of these thoughts that have been mentioned here, for example, fear of moving away from familiar and known places, fear of going out alone, all of these things do stem from the separate self. What happens is that after awakening, there is a crack in the structure of the personality. And now the mind cannot go back to the usual ways because it has tasted a glimpse of reality. So it is very difficult at that point to integrate back into the world. Now, but the thing is, it doesn't have to be decades or your whole life to go through the dark night of the soul. Dark night of the soul can end right now, here and now. And the basic fundamental understanding is to know what the mind is doing. It is basically all projected fear. So let's understand the root of all the fear, which is the separate self, which says that I have learned how to be normal. What is normal? And where have I learned that? I have learned that from my environment, where people have told me that you should be this way, you should be that way, you should be social, you should be productive, you should be busy with hobbies, and they create an image of the perfect person, an image of perfection, which says that human beings are supposed to be a particular way. But that is all persona, that is all personality. Now, after awakening, there is a dent in that personality. There is a crack because you know that that's not how life is. That's not how human beings are. And, you know, for example, your question is that you no longer have any interest in these things. So let that be for the time being. If you don't feel like doing anything, don't do anything. If you don't feel like going out, don't go out. If you feel like just sitting and listening to music, listen to music. It is just that any template or pattern that has been given to you, do not follow it blindly, but just put awareness on it and see what the mind is doing. It is creating a future projection. This fear is a future projection, where I think you say here, fear of going crazy. That's an assumption. How do we know that we'll go crazy? What if we just give in to that feeling completely? What if we just completely surrender to all these fears, seeing them as manifestations in consciousness? If we simply see them as manifestation in consciousness, what we understand is that it is just the impersonal energy which is creating all of these thoughts and thinking. But you are not the thinking, you are the spacious awareness in which the thinking is happening. So your true nature remains untouched by what is happening around. So, totally surrender to the feeling and for a moment think that what is the worst that could happen, and also surrender to that. If the worst happen, let it happen. There are many spiritual seekers who have actually lost everything. They have left all money, sometimes they have left families, they have left wealth, you know, changed careers. It can all happen in this life. Does it have to be that way? No, not at all. But when the mind totally surrenders to the fact that it is not in control, you see, the mind thrives on trying to control the outcome. And that is the problem. That is the pain. That is the resistance. So I see what's happening here is that you are resisting when you say fear of losing control in public. Well, that can also happen. Who is worried? Who is feeling fearful? Isn't it the personality? Isn't it the person who thinks that I should be a certain way? What if I lose control in public and just have an emotional outburst? People are going to think that I'm crazy. So be it. Who is crazy? No one. It's just a personality. It is an expression in the moment, which the individual is not in control of sometimes. We can try from our end to be calm, to be patient, but life is designed in such a way that sometimes a reaction may happen. It is not the reaction that is problem, but your response to the reaction that matters. And the understanding is that if a reaction happens, let it happen. But do not carry that reaction into horizontal time as suffering. Why did I do this? I should not have done this. This should not have happened. This is not normal. This is not the way I should be. All these thoughts are just continuation of the separate self in horizontal time. So when one rises above that and sees things from a neutral awareness that does not judge and discriminate and simply witnesses what is, things the way they are, then the natural outcome of that is peace. Your mind trying to grasp onto control, trying to make things or flow of life for the person a certain way is itself the problem. Because then we are trying to manipulate the flow of life, which life does not allow. The universe does not allow it. Because universe's intelligence is far superior to our limited intelligence. We may think that we want this at certain point in our life: happiness, money, fame, good relationships, harmony with others, or even removal of fear. But universe knows better, and universe will give you what you need in the moment. And there's no control that the mind has over that. So simply surrendering to all of it, that okay, this is happening, but with the understanding that this is an impersonal happening, it is not happening to me. Me, the separate self, is a collection of beliefs. So under all these fears including claustrophobia and agoraphobia, there is a story running. Put your attention to that story. What does that story tell you? And you will notice that that story is telling you that you are separate from the rest. And that is basically the cause of all conflict. To live in separation is to live in suffering. What can be taken away from you that is not yours? That which is yours can never be taken away from you. That which is the most intimate experience can never be taken away from you. That experience is I am. So be there. Just be. And allow for every arising without getting caught up in that. And acknowledge your reactions to reaction. Acknowledge your response to thoughts as well. So if a fear arises, and if there is a fear of that fear, acknowledge that too. Let that be too. Okay, there is a fear of going out in public right now. Let there be. Will I go out or not? I may or I may not. But why is it important that I have to go out? Yes, sometimes life will force me to go out because I need to work and I need to pay my bills. Then I have no option and I surrender to it and I go out and do what is required. Facing that fear completely, but not allowing stories to run around it. I will meet this person or that person, they will make a comment. All these stories run around us. There will be traffic, there will be bad weather. All these stories are running around that thought, that fear. So the root of this fear is the separate self that is afraid of death. That is afraid that it's going to go crazy, as you mentioned. And it can be dropped right now. It is not a function of time. It can be dropped here and now. Here and now, whatever is arising is your true nature. You are simply the witness of it all. Even your preferences, even your reactions to fears, it's all awareness. And that is your resting place. What you will find is that when you put total attention into what is going on, for example, if a feeling arises, let's say an emotional conflict arises, what is our usual response? Our first response is to fight it. So we come up with clever intellectual arguments. Oh, I'm right now feeling anxious. Therefore, I must breathe. I must do this. I must do meditation. I must do japa. I must do this, that. I come up with thousands and thousands of solutions to get rid of it. But that whole movement, trying to get rid of the fear, itself propagates the fear. What if I do not pay any attention to the running mind, the mind that is spinning up stories around a certain feeling and sensation, and just be totally present with that feeling, with that charge in a given moment? If I'm totally present with that charge, what I find is the charge does not stay. When you put all your attention into that, now I don't mean hypervigilance. What I simply mean is just putting awareness of the sensation that is arising and your response to that sensation as well. And there is no conflict there. You see that the anxiety is rising, the fear is rising, and then there is an opposition to that fear also rising. And you see that these two forces are pulling apart, causing tension and stress. Psychologists would call it disorder or personality traits or whatever. I just call it stress to keep things simple. So just stress. It is causing this conflict. These two forces are causing stress. Because we are identifying with these two forces. On one hand, our mind is creating the fear, and on the second thought, our mind is also creating an opposition to that fear. And these forces are pulling you apart, causing stress. Now, when this is seen, I'm not saying when you see it, I'm saying when this is seen that these two forces are creating stress, that vision itself will drop the stress without you trying to do anything or change anything. The moment you try to do anything or change anything, you already have identified with the movement. And sometimes we use critical analysis or thinking to calm down emotions, which never works. Rational mind is not powerful enough to calm the emotional mind. Emotions have to be seen for what they are. And yes, initially, identification with the sensation, feeling, thought, emotion will happen. All of it will happen, and there will be some pain. But then eventually, as you discover this presence, this aliveness, this nowness, which is timeless, you will find that slowly your mind will begin to quiet. And there will be a time when you would be able to witness the entire thing without getting attached to any outcome, without trying to change anything. And then it's simply an arising. And the base of it all is love. There will be a recognition that it all arises from unconditional love. So do not assume that your dark night has to continue forever. Just bring attention to this facet of mind and how it's playing games and how it's creating these stories, including the story that I am broken, that I need to fix myself, that I need to be out there in a certain way so that people accept me, so that the society accepts me, so that the world accepts me. But that itself is a trap because it is all analysis, it is all thinking. And it is just pushing the mind into more and more thinking. So the mind, the separate mind, the separative mind is expanding through all of this thinking, all of this rumination. So what to do? Actually, nothing to do. There is nothing to be done other than simply observe what is happening. And at some point, that observation turns into watchfulness, impersonal witnessing. That is what you are. That is indestructible. That cannot go crazy. That does not live in fear. That is unconditional love. And it is here now. It's not in the domain of time. It is not arrived at by thinking. You can tap it right now. You can be in it right now. You can be. It's your own being. It is the highest vibration. It is the highest energy. And look at this irony. We try to find solutions through practices, tips, tricks, methodologies. Yet the most intimate self, the self with the capital S, is ever present as this here and now. It is closer to you than thought. In fact, thought is the second step. It is manifestation. But stillness is here and now. It is prior to thought. And what is prior to thought is what you are. That is what the masters say. In that energy, you remain relaxed. You remain completely calm. It is like the ocean, which is turbulent on the surface. The waves are turbulent on the surface, and yes, the waves may rise. Huge waves of emotion may rise, fear may rise. But as you simply witness and allow yourself to be in that restful place, you find yourself moving to the bottom of the ocean. And at the bottom of the ocean, there is perfect calm. There is no need to do anything other than just be and let the mind do whatever it is doing, but do not believe it. Like Ramana Maharishi said, give up your belief in thought. Which thought is he talking about? He's talking about the separate self, the I, the me, that thinks that he or she is in control. Give up in that thought, and life becomes simplified. Life becomes spontaneous. Life becomes authentic. Because it is not the person that is living the life, but the life is being lived through the mind body organism that identifies itself as the person. And the personality keeps changing throughout life, but that one substratum of your beingness does not change. It is the eternal witness that watches every movement. That is the ground of every movement. That ground is your refuge. That ground is your home. And you will be surprised, as Nisargadatta Maharaj says, that a seeker can go and try to find peace and happiness everywhere other than home, only to come back home and realize that he or she never left. It was always here. It is always here. And it will be always here.